¿Cómo les va? ¿Bien? Ok, entonces intenta más duro.
I don't have a one-liner. Sorry. It's good keep going.
Apply more, Stephen.
It's kind of a joke, but so we talked about samadhi.
Hablamos de samadhi ayer, concentración.
Samadhi is the composure of the mind.
Samadhi es cómo se compone la mente.
I wanted to cover that a bit earlier because
Quería hablar de
if you look
eso
at anything
antes,
in the Eightfold Path,
porque si tú
that's
ves,
most likely to help give a sense of faith.
si tú ves cualquier cosa en el camino que nos va a dar fe, es samadhi.
It's at the far end, the faith end, the ends where you only get samadhi if you try.
Solo consigues samadhi si intentas.
I mean, if you just wait to see if you get samadhi by accident,
si esperas a ver si consigues samadhi por accidente, lo vas a conseguir 2 o 3 veces en tu vida. Y vas a intentar de averiguar por qué lo conseguiste. Quizás estabas en cierta posición o tomaste una bebida específica, pero realmente no vas a saber por qué conseguiste samadhi. Pero si hablamos de ello y decimos que está basado en ciertas cosas y experimentas con esas condiciones, posiblemente vas a ver que samadhi viene de raíz de algo. Entonces, ¿qué ha sido su experiencia de enfoque, de paz? ¿Has podido conquistar cualquier obstáculo? Has visto que tu mente ha sido estable por un tiempo sostenido. Yo me di cuenta de una diferencia con he notado que en la ciudad me siento más ansioso, me siento hay más que me distrae. Y aquí es diferente, aquí no tengo tanta distracción, estoy más tranquilo, la mente está más enfocada en estar aquí. Así que este es un lugar increíble para practicar.
Did anybody sleep better?
¿Alguien durmió bien estando aquí?
So you come in, it's somebody else's property.
Tú vienes de la propiedad de alguien más, no te tienes que preocupar de las cosas, alguien más está está cocinando y tú descansas.
You can rest a little, unwind a little. So that's samadhi. Samadhi is unwinding.
Samadhi es no estar distraído con tantas cosas y investigar por qué eso pasa.
I had an interesting experience.
Yo tuve una experiencia interesante.
Yesterday, as you said, like if you're gonna come to a meditation and you need to arrive early.
Si vas a venir a una meditación, es mejor
I was arriving late
llegar a tiempo.
to the evening.
Yo estaba llegando tarde
so I
a
stayed
la
outside.
meditación
And
de
then I
noche.
decided to do walking meditation because I really like walking meditation, but the kind of walking meditation that is really slow.
Y caminé
And
muy
then
despacio.
I got a mirror in front of me, which was the cat.
Y tuve un espejo
The cat
frente
is
mío
really
que fue
beautiful and
un
started
gato.
jumping.
O el gato.
And like
El gato quería jugar
and I was
conmigo.
paying attention
Empezó a
to
saltar.
the cat and trying to be mindful
Estaba
about
dándole
the
atención al
relationship
gato.
with the cat, but I was a little bit scared because she was like doing like really big jumps. And I'm like, oh my God.
Estaba saltando mucho, el gato me daba miedo. Y dije, este es un espejo de mi mente.
So I had this realization. This cat is putting a mirror in front of my
Porque
face.
el gato tenía mucha energía y mi mente también tiene mucha energía, es un espejo.
You maybe seen that on meditation retreat, yeah? Where the animals it really seems like they're trying to teach you something.
Sí, en muchos retiros de meditación parece que los animales a veces nos están intentando enseñar algo.
That's the funny thing about samadhi, right? You had to be calm to experience that.
Tú tuviste que estar calmada para poder experimentar eso, para reconocer que el gato fue un espejo.
Experienced a lot of the the hindrance of drowsiness.
Yo sentí
Um,
cansado
and I experimented with not being judgmental of myself for
y
that.
intenté de no me
Like,
juzgar
you know,
por estar cansado, estar contento con estar
so what?
cansado
But I've just been very aware of it.
y consciente de eso.
And then how, I mean, obviously sleep has a role in it, but food also.
Cuánto duermo tiene un papel en cuanto a eso y también comida. La comida afecta si estoy cansado.
Deals a lot with discipline.
Tiene,
You're drowsy, you just want to get into it.
si estás cansado, tiene que ver con disciplina. Si
All
no
you have
tienes
to do
mucha
is often
disciplina,
just stop yourself from doing that. Be like, nope, this is not sleeping time.
quieres, si no tienes mucha disciplina, quizás te rindes
You, like, open your
al
eyes.
sueño, pero solo
Sit up a
requiere un
little, or you
momento en
stand
que
up
tú
and
dices,
splash
no,
some water.
yo no voy a descansar en este momento.
It turns out that's the hardest thing to do when you're drowsy.
Resulta
Just
que
reset.
es difícil abrir los ojos cuando uno está cansado, pero puede ser muy beneficioso.
Any other experiences?
¿Otras experiencias?
Are you trying to
¿Ah?
meditate?
Para dormir y de noche no puedo acostar.
It's not a Kurdish
No.
just like,
Me
or,
quedo
I
dormida
mean, it's a nice
rápido.
place.
Qué bueno.
Food is good. People are good. So, yeah.
Carmen mentions that she usually takes medicine to sleep,
Yeah.
and yesterday maybe she was practicing very hard, but she didn't have to take the medicine. She felt right asleep.
It's peaceful, yeah.
Es paz.
Why do we have trouble sleeping?
Porque nos cuesta dormir,
Stuff is going on.
porque las cosas van pasando en la
I
mente.
know that sometimes when you start to meditate, maybe thoughts arise and you start to cycle.
A veces cuando empiezo a meditar hay muchos pensamientos.
Feed off of that thought, like you think about one thing and it leads to something else and it's going and then you have to bring back, okay, not really like suppress it as much, but try to bring awareness to it
Y intento de no reaccionar a los pensamientos y solo estar presente con los pensamientos.
Samadhi is the most productive of faith.
Es difícil, es por eso que decimos que
Something I
Samadhi
talked about for hours
es lo
when you saw
más
it for yourself.
productivo cuando hablamos de fe, porque
It's not interesting
yo puedo hablar de eso
investigation.
por horas, pero tú lo viste tú
Are
mismo.
there thoughts that don't lead to other thoughts?
Entonces hay una investigación, hay pensamientos que no atraen otros pensamientos.
Yeah. When you find a thought that is leading to other thoughts.
Cuando encuentras un
It's like,
pensamiento que
I
atrae
wonder
otros
what time the
pensamientos,
program's gonna be done and when I'm gonna get out of
tú
there.
puedes
I'll go
preguntarte,
find so-and-so,
¿cuándo
and
va a
this,
terminar el
and
programa?
that, and then
¿Cuánto
down the road,
se va a
I'm gonna
acabar
try to
este
do that.
cuento
You
que
see,
está
that
pasando en mi
thought
mente?
is set of thoughts. But maybe you have a thought like, it's a neat tree.
Quizás tengas un pensamiento como que ese árbol es nítido.
It doesn't lead to any other thoughts.
No hay otro pensamiento que viene después, no atrae más
So then you
pensamientos.
start to ask yourself, is it possible to cultivate the kind of thoughts that don't lead to other thoughts?
Te empiezas a preguntar si es posible cultivar
Open up
pensamientos
spaces in your
que no atraen otros pensamientos y eso nos abre espacio entre los pensamientos.
Within taking samadhi as a basis, well, I have a basic question and then build on that. Would samadhi be considered something similar to shamatha?
Same thing.
Okay. So,
Can I explain that for you?
yes.
Yeah. In a greater Buddhist context, often the exercise of meditation at the beginning is divided into phases.
A veces dividimos el ejercicio de meditación
The phase where
entre
you're trying to calm
fases.
the mind, and we call it samatha or shamatha.
Hay fases en que tratamos de calmar la mente y llamamos
When the
eso
mind is a
chamata.
bit focused,
Cuando la mente está enfocada,
you'll have a phase of being able to use it to investigate.
tendrás una fase de poder investigar con la mente enfocada para investigar cosas.
As we were talking about during the week, exploring what things are like in everyday life with our practice. There comes a point where it's one thing. Yeah.
Y viene
So
un
you just say
punto en
samadhi.
práctica cuando es una sola cosa, y investigar y
When you
estar
get
concentrado.
really good at applying your mind to a subject,
te pones muy bueno en poder aplicar la mente a un
act
sujeto.
of investigation itself becomes clarifying,
Y
calming.
el acto de investigación mismo empieza a concentrarte. No tienes que hacer
You're
dos
like, oh,
pasos.
you really focused on this is just really neat. I wonder how that works, and I wonder what's everything else just falls away.
Te puedes enfocar e investigar a la misma vez.
But that's an acquired that comes with.
Pero eso viene con mucho tiempo y práctica.
So, acknowledging that samadhi or shamatha is the basis for any other kind of meditation.
Sabiendo
can
que
be a
samadhi
practice in
es el basis de
If
cualquier tipo
we
de meditación.
decided to explore something like more analytical meditation
Si
or
fuéramos
vipassana,
explorar algo más
or insight
analítico,
meditation, like in which we choose an investigation topic that would be a spiritual topic, not an topic usually. That happened to me when I was outside. My mother passed away within a few months ago,
hace algunos
and I
meses,
started meditating on the death.
y empecé a meditar sobre la muerte, investigar la muerte misma.
And I tried to approach it from different positions.
Y intenté de verlo desde ángulos diferentes.
But because it's something that I'm still in the grief process, at times I noticed I had to bring back shamatha.
Pero estoy todavía triste, así
calm
que
down,
a veces
and,
tuve que
so I could
volver
go
a
into
mi
the topic
concentración para
again.
calmarme, para volverlo a investigar.
Yeah, so I found myself going back and forth between trying to investigate a topic and then realizing that my mind was not calm.
Entonces tuve que cambiar desde investigar un asunto y después calmarme, y después investigar y después calmarme.
It's not a question. No, that's what do that.
Dice, haz eso. Dice,
That is Buddhist practice.
eso es una buena práctica budista.
We like to explore death, which is a universal truth facing all of us.
Explorar la muerte, que es una verdad universal para todos nosotros.
Buddhism is sort of like a
Es una
lifetime
muy buena investigar, es cosa para investigar.
As long as your lifetime is.
Es una cosa muy buena para investigar
So
toda la
at
vida.
first, it's just way too intense.
Al inicio
You
eso es
take it in
demasiado
little
intenso
bits.
y lo tomas en morditos pequeños.
But over time, it seems more calming than to think about life.
Pero
Life is difficult.
con que pasa
Death is
tiempo,
pretty simple.
la muerte puede calmarte más pensar en la muerte que pensar en
But you
vida,
get there
porque la vida es muy
through
complicada. Y llega un punto en que pensar en la muerte te puede calmar mucho.
John, could you go into the third and fourth stages of, you said there was the calming of the mind, the investigation.
Oh, no.
Sure, I know anything. I thought you said there were 4 stages of meditation. Well, in this particular way you were mentioning. And the first stage was calming the mind, so that you can do the investigation. The second stage is investigation. What happens in the third and fourth?
Are you talking about the 4 foundations of mindfulness with the body, the feelings, and then the...
This was just mentioned prior to the question.
Yeah, no, like this is a normal mode of practice, yeah? Especially when we've got a topic to investigate and we're learning about it. We calm the mind and we make sure the hindrances are not there.
Es normal practicar así. Primero calmas la mente,
Thought. The hindrances hinder investigation.
porque si algo te está,
So the calming is to be
si no
sure that
estás
those are not
calmado,
affecting our thought
pues no puedes investigar. Entonces primero calmamos la
But
mente.
then meditation can also refer to the investigation.
Y después la meditación puede ser la investigación que hacemos.
Now, samadhi does have levels, progressive levels. But this is samadhi specific.
Samadhi específicamente tiene niveles.
And I say that occurs when the sense of calming the mind and the sense of investigating the subject have merged into being the same thing.
Y hay momentos en que calmar la mente e investigar
That
pueden
requires a distance from the
emergir
hindrances.
y
That involves
ser la misma cosa.
really seeing where the hindrances come from and getting over those frameworks of mind. So I could talk about the 4 levels of jhana samadhi, but I won't.
Yo podría hablar de los 4 niveles de Samadhi,
If
pero
one of
no
you
lo
is
voy a
working
hacer.
with this, you can come talk to me.
Si hay uno de ustedes que está trabajando con esos, puedes hablar conmigo
Just
después,
samadhi.
pero no tenemos tiempo aquí.
Samadhi is very, very interesting that way.
Samadhi es muy interesante.
I say it's one of the fastest ways of developing faith.
Es
I
la
joke
forma más rápida de desarrollar fe.
that the first experience of meditation that a wise person has
La primera experiencia de meditación
sort
que
of
una
goes
persona
like this.
sabia
You say, okay,
es
now we're
así.
going to sit down and we're going to follow our breath.
Una persona sabia dice, nos vamos a sentar y
Sit
seguir
down,
la respiración.
close our eyes.
Nos sentamos, cerramos
We're
los ojos,
obviously focusing.
estamos enfocando.
2-3 minutes later,
2 o 3 minutos
they
después,
open their eyes
ellos abren los ojos
and say, my mind is crazy.
y dicen, mi mente está loca.
And this is wisdom.
Y eso es sabiduría, conocimiento.
Why would your mind not be crazy if you've never studied how to apply it?
Tu mente, obvio, va a estar loca si nunca has estudiado cómo aplicarlo.
Samadhi is a great metric
Samadhi es una buena medida
for how well all the other factors of the Eightfold Path are going.
para ver qué tal el camino de 8 partes en general
And by extension, how balanced our lifestyle
y qué tan balanceado nuestro estilo de vida es.
The calm and the focus of the mind is sort of the meter for the health of the mind.
Qué tan calmada es la mente es una buena medida de qué tan saludable es la mente.
There's a lot of thought that maybe samadhi and meditation is very technique oriented.
Hay mucho pensamiento que Samadhi tiene mucho que ver con la técnica que
But I
aplicamos.
say no more than any other factor of the Eightfold Path.
Pero no es tan cierto.
You need technique to see right view. Yeah, we talked about that last week.
Para ver las cosas apropiadas
You need
necesitas
technique
técnica.
to keep from killing and stealing.
Para prevenirte a hacer
Presented
cosas
with a really
malas
good
en el
opportunity.
mundo también necesitas técnica.
You need technique to stay mindful
Para quedarte
of the body or feeling.
para quedarte consciente de tu cuerpo, de tus sentimientos. Para eso
All these
necesitas
things take
técnica también.
technique
Todo requiere
until they
técnica
become second nature.
hasta que sean naturales.
So samadhi is the same way.
Samadhi es igual.
There is technique. You can get better at samadhi.
Hay técnica y puedes mejorar en Samadhi,
But it's also, there's some part of it that's not technique.
pero hay una parte de eso que no es
If
técnica.
you're living your life in a really sloppy way,
Estabas viviendo la vida,
you won't get samadhi.
si estás viviendo la vida de
matter how much
forma
you wish.
sin cuidado, no vas a
Sitting
conseguir
down and
Samadhi.
saying prayers,
No importa cuánto te sientas
send charity to some organization,
o mandar dinero a una organización,
still don't get samadhi.
no te va a dar Samadhi de esa forma.
But if you live in a balanced way,
Pero si vives de forma
off the
balanceada,
cushion,
fuera del cojín,
your life is already peaceful.
tu vida ya está calmada.
When you sit on the cushion and whether or not you do technique, it's still pretty
Y
peaceful.
te sientas en el cojín y va a ser bastante calmado.
So you need to explore it on the first day. Just give yourself a bit more time.
Eso quería explorarlo el primer día y darte más
Time to do
tiempo,
what? Time to sit.
más tiempo para sentarte.
Because maybe you'll sit down and you'll be like, it's crazy.
Porque
It never stops.
quizás te vas a sentar y te vas a dar cuenta que tu
It's
mente
like a
está
cat.
loca. Es como un gato que nunca para.
It just never stops
Nunca para.
until it does.
Hasta que para.
There is a skill. That's what I say. It's not always crazy. But learn. So we'll keep trying, yeah? Give yourself a time. Find a place, sit down, take a moment, establish. Alex asked me a question on Friday. He asked me, when you're preparing to talk on something, how much time do you find yourself thinking about what you're going to say?
Alex le preguntó a Tahn, cuando estás preparando una charla, ¿cuánto tiempo te das para pensar en lo que quieres
You
decir?
might notice that I don't have notes.
Quizás vas a ver que no
I
tengo
come from a
notas.
tradition that often tries to say impromptu.
En mi tradición intentamos de hacerlo sin mucha preparación,
What's it? Improvise, yeah.
improvisado,
Because it's always going to be a reflection of what I have faith in.
porque siempre va a ser una reflexión de lo que
If I'm on the
yo
spot,
tengo
I just
fe.
won't talk about things I don't know.
Si no tengo tiempo para preparar,
Third and fourth
no
jhana,
voy a hablar
how to
de
get there,
cosas
and all that.
que yo no sé. Por ejemplo, el tercer y el cuarto jhana, no voy a hablar de eso.
Just stick with what really makes sense, and I'll talk about that.
Yo me quedo con lo que realmente me hace sentido y yo
But to
hablaré de eso.
answer Alex's question, like how often do I think and prepare?
Pero para responder a la pregunta de cuánto preparo
I
cuando voy a
realized-
dar una charla,
Just over time, it's become very natural.
me di cuenta de que tras tiempo ha sido muy natural.
At the times I am preparing,
En los momentos
thinking ahead.
en que estoy preparando,
I've gone somewhere quiet.
yo siempre voy a un lugar
I've
calmado.
calmed the mind, maybe walking.
Y quizás yo
Sitting
calmo la mente caminando, sentándome,
And then I think about what
y después yo pienso en lo que voy a decir.
This becomes a technique that we develop that applies to all the things in our life.
Esa es una técnica de que desarrollamos que aplica a todas las cosas de nuestra vida.
If we want to be effective in something,
Si queremos ser efectivos en algo,
samadhi is that thing that makes us effective.
Samadhi nos hace muy efectivo poder calmar la
Allows
mente,
us to think in straight.
nos permite pensar de forma lineal.
So explore that. Even if it's not anything to do with this practice, if you have a problem,
Entonces exploren eso, aunque no tenga nada que ver con una
you were to
práctica
go somewhere
budista. Si
quiet
tienes un
and
problema,
settle for a few minutes,
anda a un lugar calmado y siéntate unos
so you have
minutos.
a better sense of the problem.
Quizás después de estar calmado tengas un sentido mejor del problema.
If you got a manual on how to use your mind, it would be in there.
Si tuvieras un manual de cómo usar la mente, estaría en eso.
I
Esa
didn't get a
instrucción
manual.
estaría en eso. No me dieron un manual.
You got lost in the mail.
Yeah. Somebody's done that.
Would you please explain the Theravadan tradition of faith, the meaning of faith again?
Saddha is the word, and it means
La palabra de fe es sattva en
faith in
Theravada.
something,
Y es fe en algo,
confidence in something.
confianza en algo.
It has nothing to do with belief.
No tiene que ver con creencia.
Now, you're willing to try things out that you haven't experienced yet,
Tú estás dispuesta de intentar
based
cosas que no
on
estás
confidence in the
experimentado,
source,
quizás basado en confianza en la
or
fuente,
confidence in your own understanding, and your own wisdom, which says there's something here.
o quizás basado en tu propio entendimiento de que quizás hay algo aquí.
But at the point that you've experienced something for yourself,
Pero ya cuando lo experimentas tú mismo,
nobody can talk you out of it.
nadie te puede convencer de otra cosa.
That
Tú
is faith.
sabes que las cosas son así. Eso es fe.
So I could talk about the nature of the mind, but when you sit and watch your mind do something, and you're like, well, that's that hindrance. At that point, I don't have to talk anymore. You know what that
Cuando
hindrance
tú
looks like in
observas
practice.
estas
faith,
cosas,
yes,
tú
there is a
tienes
hindrance.
fe en esas cosas, en las dificultades se nos enfrentan durante la
We have
meditación.
devotional objects.
Tenemos
The idea of
objetos
bhakti,
de
you
devoción.
know, in Buddhism.
Hay una idea
I
de
have
bhakti,
teachers that I
devoción.
respect and just
Yo
send
tengo
good will.
maestros que yo respeto y les mando amor todo el tiempo.
Yeah, I have devotion and respect towards them because I've seen their quality.
Tengo devoción en ellos porque
Not
yo he visto
once,
sus
not in
cualidades.
passing. It's
No
not
es solo
something
una
somebody
vez,
told me about.
no es algo que
I saw how they
alguien me
responded to a
dijo.
situation.
Yo vi cómo ellos
I knew that
respondieron
that
a
was
una
the result of
situación
their practice.
Y yo sabía que eso era el resultado de su
So somebody
práctica.
could tell me that guy, he's no good, he's a fake.
Alguien podría decirme que esa persona no es buena, es
So I've
falso.
seen otherwise.
Yo diría, yo he visto de otra forma.
I'm not so sure about myself, but I'm pretty sure about
No
that
estoy
guy.
tan seguro de mi práctica, pero yo sé bien de la práctica de él.
So, 2:50. So last weekend we talked about
El fin de semana pasado
things that are
hablamos
universal that I could say about all the people in here.
de cosas que son universales que yo podría decir de todo el
Many
mundo
of you were
aquí.
not here then.
Pero muchos de ustedes no
Could
estaban
you
aquí.
guess what some of those things are? I've
Podrían
already said.
adivinar de cuáles son esas cosas.
Something you can say about every single person in this room. Yeah, yeah.
Todos vamos a morir. Y
We're bound to suffer.
You suffer.
sufrimiento.
Ah, you beat me to it. But yes.
¿Cuál fue?
What
¿Puedo
did you
decir?
say? You're seeking happiness.
Estamos
And
buscando
this is
felicidad.
unexpected, yeah? It seems like Buddhists are very depressing people.
Esto es inesperado.
Is
Parece
there
que
a
budistas
difference between being happy and
deprimen
content?
mucho.
Yeah.
Yeah. So are we seeking contentment or are we seeking happiness?
Do we know the difference? Do we internally know the difference?
Hay una diferencia entre
Because like
buscar
thinking that you're
estar
seeking happiness,
contento
or we really not
o
trying to seek
buscar
contentment
felicidad.
because happiness
Does contentment strike you as a happy state?
it is a form of happy state.
Yeah. Yeah, we want happy states. Right? And there can be many happy states.
Puede haber muchos
Joy, exuberance,
estados
fascination,
de felicidad,
wonder, delight,
alegría, gozo,
bliss,
éxtasis,
even equanimity or the balance of the mind
hasta ecuanimidad
is said to be a subtle form of happiness.
es una forma sutil de felicidad.
Contentment is a great source of happiness for me.
Estar contento es una buena
Lolita
fuente
and
de
I-
felicidad para mí.
We were threading our way through the kitchen with all of these conversations going on, and ducking underneath people, and scooting through doors.
Melita y yo estamos
And we got here first so we could pick a spot with a fan.
estamos
That's wisdom.
fugiendo de la cocina y todas esas
I said,
conversaciones de ahí
this is the joy of non-attachment.
y buscando un lugar cerca de los abanicos y dijimos que esta es la alegría de no estar apegado.
It feels pretty cool to me.
Me siente bastante fresco para mí.
Isn't there an attachment though? The way I'm thinking is that neutrality and detachment would be, I sit where I sit, and I'd be content with that.
That can be a form of equanimity, but equanimity, not to misinterpret it, it's not passivity.
Ser
It's not
ecuánimo,
not
ecuanimidad
taking
no es pasividad, no es ser pasivo.
It's a sense of recognizing what you have control over.
Más bien es reconocer de
You
que
have control
tenemos
over what you
control.
get involved in.
Tenemos control en qué nos
You don't have control
envolvemos.
over some of the things that happen.
No tenemos control de muchas cosas que nos pasan.
Well, you've got these two routes, and one involves coming to the hall late,
Tenemos dos formas y una tiene
and
que
one
ver con
involves getting to the hall early
llegar
and being able to take care of
antes
yourself.
y poder cuidarnos y la otra forma es
You'll
llegar
be a
tarde,
bit more rested for the sit.
estarás un poco
Which you
más
may know over time
descansado,
makes the sit a bit easier.
sentarte si llegas temprano.
Equanimity is understanding, seeing both, and measuring. Sometimes you it doesn't matter. Sometimes you're like about the same. Sometimes you say be great to get here a little early.
Entonces uno puede tomar decisiones, no es que vamos a ser pasivos.
But to go back to happiness,
Para regresar a
this is
felicidad,
maybe an interesting reflection, I think.
esto puede ser un
That we
reflejo
can say
interesante.
all beings are trying to be happy.
Que podemos decir que todos los seres aquí están intentando de ser felices. Es algo
It's
universal.
universal.
Es universal.
Not for me, the Buddha said this too.
Yo no dije esto, el Buda dijo esto también.
Really? All beings are trying to be happy.
De verdad, todos estamos intentando de ser felices.
Even non-human.
All beings want to be happy. So the only difference between us in this regard is how we go about getting that happy.
La única diferencia es cómo buscamos entre nosotros, es cómo buscamos esa
So
felicidad.
you can see the man who breaks into a store and grabs the merchandise
Puedes
and
ver
tries to get away with
ver
it.
el hombre que roba cosas de una tienda,
He's trying to be happy,
está
right?
intentando de ser feliz.
Just as much as somebody who goes to a yoga ashram
Igual que alguien que va a un ashram de
stands
yoga
doing fancy postures
y hace
in the hot sun.
posturas difíciles en el sol calentador.
Just as much as somebody who sits out in their garden in the lawn chair.
Igual que una persona que se siente en el jardín en
They're
una
all trying
silla.
to be happy.
Todos están intentando de ser felices.
So the sixth factor of the Eightfold Path
El-
is simpler and more basic than
La sexta parte
mindfulness.
del camino de 8 partes es más sencillo que conciencia y
It's
samadhi.
called right effort or right endeavor.
Se llama esfuerzo correcto.
It's recognizing that we want to be happy
Reconocer que queremos ser
and looking
felices
at how we go about it.
y es ver cómo lo buscamos esa felicidad.
So as we covered last weekend, part of right view, the first factor, is do we believe that happiness is outside of ourselves?
Una parte del primer factor es si creemos que la felicidad está fuera de nosotros.
This can be a problem. Yeah?
Esto puede ser un problema.
We find we're endeavoring to get something,
Encontramos que estamos intentando de
get
conseguir
happy.
algo para ser felices.
so happiness is this way,
Felicidad
but we're trying to get the thing, and it's this way.
es hacia ahí, pero estamos buscando la cosa y está
We're
fuera.
adding extra distance
Estamos
to happiness.
agregando más distancia entre
If we
nosotros
get
y
there at
felicidad.
all.
Si llegamos ahí del todo,
If we pin our happiness on external things,
si ponemos las felicidades
then we
en
set a
cosas
condition where we might not
externas,
be happy.
ponemos una condición en que quizás no vamos a ser felices.
Under the Eightfold Path is recognizing that happiness is not outside of us.
Una parte del camino es reconocer que la
The
felicidad
cool
está,
thing
no está
about
fuera de nosotros.
samadhi is that the implication,
Lo lindo de Samadhi es que la implicación,
mindfulness, focus, ecstasy, bliss, equanimity,
todos estos estados de felicidad,
concentration,
como estar
all of these things are
contento,
already part of the mind.
estar con alegría, todas estas cosas ya,
Whenever-
ya son
whenever we
parte de la mente.
experience them
Cuando,
in regard to
cuando
something that's going on
experimentamos
externally,
esos estados de felicidad
we take a pill, or we get our paycheck at the end of the
si
week,
lo hacemos por,
or
por,
a crowd of people
eh,
give us a standing
por,
ovation.
por coincidencias externas,
We might experience
por
happiness,
ejemplo,
bliss,
alguien nos
ecstasy,
paga
joy.
algo o alguien nos da aplausos, vamos a sentir mucha
But
felicidad.
that ecstasy and joy is the result of a relief that's happening.
Pero esa felicidad viene del
A crowd of people give us a standing
Um,
ovation. What is the relief?
relief, yo no sé traducir.
Oh, they like me.
Pero la idea es que cuando
That
nos dan
relief can be
aplausos
profound.
es que
It
estamos
can be
pensando
the
que esta
best
gente
kind of
nos
bliss.
quiere. Puede ser
We
profundo.
find in samadhi that that bliss is already in the mind.
Pero
The happiness
encontramos
is
en
already part of
Samadhi
the
que
mind.
eso ya está parte de la mente, dentro de nosotros.
We'll let go of that idea that we need the external validation.
No necesariamente necesitamos el aplauso para sentir esa felicidad. Yo ya
We
tengo
start to
eso.
see, I'm not that bad a guy.
Y te das cuenta, yo no
We
soy
start to
tan
give
malo.
ourselves a standing ovation.
Y nos empezamos a dar a
That's
nosotros
a
mismos
meditation.
un aplauso.
Would you say that's a
¿Tienes algo para
I
decir?
said that's a good meditation. Don't be afraid to give yourself a standing ovation.
Carmen has a comment, I think.
Te digo que lamentablemente a veces uno lo descubre tarde,
Yeah.
pero que me di cuenta que nosotras las madres queremos llevar el control siempre del hogar,
Yeah.
cuando el hogar se compone de una familia y se debería de dividir entre todos.
Mhm.
Y por eso es que muchas veces hay pues, ciertos problemas.
So déjame hasta ahí. Sadly, sometimes we learn too late, but a mother really wants to have control over her home. And when the home gets divided, that can create a big division.
Pues hace ahora exactamente un año yo decidí tomar el control de mi vida y tratar de ser feliz.
So 1 year ago, I tried to take control of my life and try to be happy.
Canalizar las cosas que me hacen daño.
Channel the things that, ¿las cosas qué?
Que me han hecho daño.
Channel the things that have hurt me.
El apego tanto de los hijos como de amistades o de cosas.
Like the attachments to children and as well as to things.
Y así he logrado tener un poco de paz.
And I've been able to find a little bit of peace trying to address these attachments.
That is what we're talking about.
Estamos hablando de eso, justo. Sí,
So
qué
you
bueno.
see, what you described, it wasn't a point-by-point militant. You said, to get happiness, I need to get everybody to agree to some ground rules.
Lo que describiste no era que no dijiste que para conseguir felicidad necesito que todos se comporten de cierta forma.
Maybe that works, maybe it doesn't.
Quizás eso funciona, quizás no.
You said, I've got to apply myself to control those things which are making us difficult.
Pero más bien dijiste, yo tengo que aplicarme a controlar las cosas que realmente están causándome dificultades.
I've got to develop and protect those things that make it pleasant.
Y desarrollar y proteger las cosas que hace la vida, que da placer a la vida.
It's not an instant solution.
No es una cosa instantánea,
So this was
no es
the
una
wisest
solución
course.
instantánea, pero es un camino con sabiduría, un
Like
camino sabio,
cultivating a garden.
como cultivar un jardín.
You pull the weeds,
Sacas la maleza
you water the plants.
y das agua a las plantas.
The plant grows at its own rate.
La planta crece a su
But
propio
you've
ritmo,
created the best conditions you
pero has puesto las condiciones que puedas.
can. So in some ways you can derive happiness knowing that you did your best.
Entonces tú puedes estar feliz sabiendo de que tú hiciste lo mejor que
Maybe your
pudiste,
house still stays a little crazy.
aunque la casa siga siendo un poco loco,
But at that point you can know
pero ya sabes,
it's not my crazy.
no es mi locura, yo no hice esto,
Other people are helping.
las otras personas están ayudando con la locura.
Right effort
Esfuerzo correcto.
is often given as
Es
fourfold.
difícil, pero hay que respetar.
Esfuerzo correcto tiene 4 partes.
To let's see, as I'm trying to think of the word, to work to abandon unwholesome
La
qualities.
primera parte es abandonar cualidades que no son sanadoras, sanos.
To work to prevent them from arising in the future.
Prevenir esas cualidades en el futuro.
To work to protect those wholesome qualities that are present.
Proteger las cualidades sanas que están presentes.
And to see that wholesome qualities arise in the future.
Y para buscar que nos lleguen más cualidades sanas en el futuro.
In a lot of ways, this is an amazing innovation in leading a human life.
Esta es una
This formula.
innovación increíble de vivir una vida humana.
I don't want to put you on the spot, Carmen, but I came through in breakfast, and there was a very fiery conversation going on. But when I came through, and I was dealing with
Había una
some politics.
conversación de política en la
It's
cocina
hard, yeah, not
esta-
to get
esta
wrapped up in
mañana
it.
y es
And I
difícil
thought,
no envolverme en esa
I
conversación.
wonder if you stepped away at just that moment,
Y me pregunto, si tú,
would you feel better or worse
tú
after that line of
si tú
conversation?
hubieras ido después de esa
Because I know
conversación,
for
si
myself,
te
I'm careful about
sentirías
politics.
mejor o peor
And I'm
después de esa
reminding
conversación.
myself repeatedly, because I'm about to visit my father in Texas.
Y yo sé que para mí, yo tengo
With
mucho
Fox News going all
cuidado,
the
yo tengo mucho cuidado con política porque
Strong
yo voy a visitar a
American
mi
views.
papá en Texas
I'm
y
reminding myself,
él siempre ve Fox News.
what if you enter in every conversation and conduct every conversation, then may we feel better after this
Y me
conversation
recuerdo
than when we entered.
qué sería buscar sentir siempre mejor después de cada conversación de lo que estábamos cuando entramos.
It's a lifelong investigation.
Esta es una investigación de vida.
It means that saying something good or saying something right,
Quiere
because you
decir
had
que
a lot of good points,
decir algo
is not
cierto
the best
o
end result of the
correcto
conversation.
no necesariamente es lo mejor para una conversación.
You will win some, you'll lose some.
Vas a ganar algunos y perder otros.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that saying something right or saying something clever or saying something
Decir algo
authoritative
correcto o autorativo
is your goal of the
no
conversation.
necesariamente es mi meta en conversación.
But if you approach it, how can I be more skillful during this conversation?
Pero si busco cómo puedo ser más efectivo en esta
Then you are
conversación,
successful no matter how the conversation
then yo
goes.
seré exitoso no importa cómo va
And
la
if everybody
conversación.
disagrees with you,
Y si todo el mundo está en desacuerdo conmigo,
you are still able to learn from the conversation.
yo aprendería igual de la
Which means the next
conversación
conversation will be even better.
y la próxima conversación será mejor.
This is how right effort brings peace and clarity in our life.
Así, esfuerzo correcto nos trae paz y claridad en la vida.
Changing the way that we approach things and saying, can this be for my benefit?
Cambiar la forma en que nos acercamos a las
Can
cosas
I
y
learn
pensar
from
en
this?
cada situación. Si esta
Can I use it
situación
to
puede ser para
purify
mi
myself?
beneficio, puedo usar esta situación para purificarme, para
Can I create
enseñarme,
benefit for myself and others from this?
o beneficio para mí o para otros en esto.
Can you give an example of how you can do that in a difficult or charged conversation?
Very, especially with family. It's not easy.
No es
It's not
fácil,
easy, and that's
no es
exactly
fácil
why
hacer
it's
esto
so powerful.
y por eso es tan poderoso.
Imagine a conversation
Imagínate una conversación
where somebody enters into a political conversation and says, how can we make this work for everybody?
alguien entra a una conversación política y dice, ¿cómo
You'll
podemos
be like,
hacer
hard
esto
stop,
funcionar para todos?
But often you find that when an agreement is worked out between people with different values,
A veces cuando hay un acuerdo entre personas con valores
That's exactly what
diferentes,
somebody said, I'm not going to be totally right. and you're
muchas
not gonna be
veces es
totally right."
porque alguien dice, yo no voy a tener
We're gonna
toda la
find a middle
razón
ground where we
y tú no vas a
compromise.
tener toda la razón, vamos a buscar un
Where is that?
compromiso en
Give me
el
a
centro.
suggestion, and I'll give you my suggestion.
¿Dónde
A
está
little
ese
closer, a
punto?
little further, a little closer. You create a compromise where both of you can say, I got enough of what I wanted for this to be workable.
Las dos personas buscan un punto de compromiso para que los dos consigan algo que les
It's a
pueda
definite
satisfacer.
skill in relating to people.
Es,
And there's a recognition that we don't have to get it right.
es una capacidad en cómo nos relacionamos
We can
uno al
enter
otro.
into a situation and recognize that we're not good at it.
Podemos entrar a una situación y reconocer que no somos buenos en eso. Tenemos unos padrones malos.
But we can say, is there anything I can do to mitigate or to minimize those bad habits?
Pero podemos decir, ¿hay algo que yo pueda hacer para minimizar
Like,
esos
just like the
hábitos malos?
hindrances, to be careful around them.
Y tener cuidado con esos
So it's a
hábitos.
technique. You say, can I develop a technique?
Esta es
Or
una
I just think
técnica.
of it.
Y yo digo,
Or you just think what?
hay una técnica,
Yeah,
que,
it's like
hay una
techniques.
técnica que
I
yo
didn't
pueda
tell you, but you said
desarrollar.
I need a technique. And you do it. How can I keep from saying something about Trump?
¿Cómo puedo no decir algo sobre Trump?
It's not that hard.
No
it's,
es
it's
tan
one very
difícil.
uncommon word in
Es
English
una
language.
palabra muy poco común
I spent so much
el
of my life
lenguaje
never saying
inglés.
that word.
Yo pasé tanto de mi vida nunca diciendo esa
And you
palabra.
can't play spades. Or it would be very confusing. But yes,
What would you say about the monks that burn themselves to carry on a message? Or even the Dalai Lama, when he was asked.
¿Qué dirías?
Well, it would be actually a different position. I would present two positions. A Vietnamese monk
¿Qué dirías
lack of
sobre los
motivation or
los
the refusal
monjes
to engage in a war
que
burns. Because
que
one
se
could communicate
quemaron
something. It's not a
para
gentle way of communicating.
para comunicar algo?
And Thich Nhat Hanh has explained that. And then something that maybe the Dalai Lama would say in a different spirit, maybe, when he was asked, do you hate the Chinese? And he said, the Chinese
Le preguntaron al Dalai Lama si
have taken my country,
odian a los
have
chinos
destroyed our
y
monasteries.
dice el Dalai
have
Lama
raped
que los
monastic.
chinos
Why
han
would I
destruido
also give them my mind?
han destruido
But right now in Puerto Rico, we're going through the invasion of sorts of Puerto Rico. So a version of engaged Buddhism will not stay indifferent or
hay una versión del budismo que dice hay que
and
estar
some other version would say, well, I'm not going to give you my life. So there's two positions, maybe two versions of Buddhism.
It would seem like there are two versions, but given this Eightfold Path, I ask you, the monk who burned himself, did everybody get the message?
I'm not sure.
I can tell you for certain, not everybody got the message. And I say this because a number of people have been burning themselves lately. Some with many years of experience in that form of Buddhism, and some only because they were suicidal and they wanted some glimmer of value to their suicide. So this happened recently at a temple near where I live, where the man was mentally unstable, and he knew in this particular tradition that somebody once had burned themselves. And so he went up to the base of the temple and he set himself on fire.
hay alguien en un templo cerca de donde yo vivo que se quemó, que se suicidó
It's true that Vietnamese monk who did it, I think in the 70s,
porque no era estable
it was
de
a
la mente.
powerful message and it reached many people.
Y esa persona hay otro monje que lo
So
hizo
it's
en
not
los
to speak
70
ill of it.
y él mandó un mensaje muy poderoso
But the question of
contra
was it the
la
most
guerra de
effective
Vietnam.
thing to do
Pero
is
la
still a valid question.
La pregunta es si eso fue la cosa más efectiva para hacer. Es una
I think
pregunta
the Dalai
válida.
Lama was better equipped.
Para mí el Dalai Lama está mejor equipado.
So for him to continue living was more beneficial.
Para él
Whereas he could have made a
continuar
similar message.
vivir era
And in Puerto
muy
Rico
más
too.
beneficioso.
And because we come from an area
En
that's
Puerto
a
Rico,
lot of activism.
It's
very
también,
liberal area,
nosotros venimos
very
de una
hardcore
área
There's just as many problems as Puerto Rico.
con muchos activistas.
Might be hard to believe, but I know a lot of people absolutely miserable because of the state of affairs in the world. And we find that indignation and righteousness doesn't help us get our message across.
Indignación
But there is
a veces no nos ayuda
there's a kernel, there is a core
comunicar nuestro mensaje.
of how deeply we care about the issue.
A veces hay un centro
That is
ahí
totally wholesome.
de qué tan profundo sentimos
This is why I say
los
equanimity
problemas.
is not a passive
Es muy
state.
saludable.
It's not, let's just be okay with the state of affairs.
Ecuanimidad no es un estado pasivo, no es decir, yo no voy a tener acción. Es decir, ¿cuál es la cosa más efectiva que yo pueda
And if we
hacer?
can't think of anything,
Y si no podemos pensar en nada,
and we say, I'm going to try what I think is best,
entonces decimos, yo voy a intentar de hacer lo que yo pienso es mejor y voy
with
a
an
ver
open heart,
cómo uno
let's
sigue
try.
con un corazón abierto.
Be making light of a simple situation. Once the Dalai Lama had a mosquito buzzing around his head.
Una vez el Dalai Lama tuvo un mosquito ahí cerca
And
de
he
la
said, I will
cabeza
give you 3 warnings.
y dijo al mosquito, yo te voy a dar 3 warnings, advertencias.
And with utmost compassion, he said, I warn you, my friend,
Y-
you are making very bad karma.
Y con mucha compasión dijo, yo te advertí, amigo, tú vas a hacer karma muy malo.
And the 4th time, he just went,
Y la cuarta vez hizo
and have a positive rebirth.
que tengas un renacimiento
I am so
positivo.
sorry.
Yo lo siento mucho.
He wasn't getting the message.
Porque el mosquito no estaba entendiendo.
Even the Dalai Lama
Yo
doesn't
lo
have
sé.
all the perfect answers.
Hasta el Dalai Lama no tiene las respuestas perfectas.
But sometimes the perfect answer is to try.
Pero a veces la respuesta perfecta es intentar.
I have an adage that is proven true to me in crazy community life.
Yo tengo un dicho que ha sido muy verdadero para mí en vidas comunitarias.
Ultimately,
En cualquier grupo,
the person who is in charge
la persona que
is
está
the person who has the most equanimity.
la persona que está en una posición de poder es la persona con más ecuanimidad.
They are never the loudest person.
Nunca son las personas que
They are
tienen la
never
voz más
doing the
alta
most.
y nunca están haciendo
But when energy
más
is
trabajo.
lowest
Pero cuando la energía está más baja
and people are ready to disband,
y las personas están listas para irse,
they're the one who's still there doing it.
esa es la persona que sigue ahí
Still
haciendo el
giving ideas.
trabajo, dando ideas.
And then when people figure it out, then the busy
Y
and energetic
después,
ones go back to doing
cuando
it.
la gente están de vuelta con mucha energía, esta persona está más baja de esa persona. Así que
Examining this middle way and
Las-
skillful conduct
las
and saying,
personas
can we do better?
están buscando el camino del medio,
They're
preguntando
ultimately putting it all together.
si podemos hacer mejor. Son los líderes.
But we only see this in a crisis.
Pero solo vemos esto en una crisis.
Most of the time it's okay for things to be mediocre and to learn along the way.
Mayormente está bien si las cosas no están perfectas y aprender en el camino.
Another example, I became a wandering monk in
Otro,
the Theravada tradition.
otro ejemplo, yo soy
It's a
un
long tradition of
monje
pilgrimage.
de peregrinaje.
You have a bowl.
Yo tengo
Much
un
lighter
plato
than this.
menos pesado que
You
esto.
can go into town and beg for food.
Y yo voy al pueblo y pido comida.
And then you can sleep in the forest.
Y después yo duermo en el bosque
Travel in sandals.
y viajo en
This has been done
chancletas.
in Asia for 2,500
Esto
years.
se hace
Or
en
long,
Asia
much
por
longer.
2000 años o 4000 años.
But I wanted to do it in America
Yo
so
lo
that
que-
people could see monks.
Yo lo
they could
quería hacer en
hear
Estados
the
Unidos
Dharma.
para que las personas pudieran ver monjes aquí en Estados Unidos.
And everybody said, how will you do this?
Y todo el mundo dijo, ¿cómo vas a hacer
It
esto?
gets cold.
Hace mucho frío aquí.
People don't know Buddhism.
Las personas no saben
Where do you get
budismo, no te van a dar comida.
And I had to say, I don't know.
Y yo dije, yo no sé,
I just tried.
yo voy a intentar.
When I come back, I'll have some answers for you.
Cuando regreso, yo tendré respuesta para ti.
So I didn't start very good at it.
Yo no era muy bueno en esto,
But over time, I learned how to do it better.
pero con el tiempo lo hice cada vez mejor.
Now I could say authoritatively, it is definitely possible
Y yo puedo decir
anywhere in
con
America.
autoridad que es posible en cualquier lugar de los Estados Unidos.
Though there's some places I wouldn't be too interested in doing,
Pero hay lugares donde no estaría muy interesado en hacer eso.
but I could have.
Pero lo podía haber hecho.
It's the right effort.
Esfuerzo correcto.
This is less focused than like working with the 500s.
Esto es menos enfocado que
Less
trabajar con
focused
las
than knowing where
construcciones.
you can base your mindfulness.
Es menos enfoque en saber dónde poner la conciencia.
It deals with all unwholesome states. and
Tiene que
all
ver
wholesome
con
states.
todos los estados sanadoras y no sanadoras.
Is that a-
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I wanted to see if you can elaborate on something. I don't know if it's a part of your specific tradition, but I know in other spiritual teachings that I've read and explored outside of Buddhism, this idea of like minds being joined, and I don't know, it reminded me of like the right effort and right intention, because a lot of times, specifically in like family classrooms, that's the hardest. We're informed, there's like a conflict, but it's like, yeah, how you're bringing yourself to it and what you're really trying to communicate with that person, right? Like remembering, okay, I want to give love to this person. Am I communicating that to them? And oftentimes we're like so result oriented. We want the form to be there. We want them to agree with us and say, yeah, you're right. But like you said, that doesn't happen all the time. So, but I'm wondering, right, so that makes it more difficult, but I've heard of this idea of like stored consciousness feel like that's the same as like the minds are joined in this idea of like, well, they'll feel the intention, and I just wonder if that's like a part of your practice at all, or if you could elaborate on any of that idea of like, yeah, this kind of sort of consciousness between like almost animate beings.
That's in the Tibetan tradition. Storehouse consciousness, but I think it's used in a different context.
Yeah, but ultimately, even though there's interbeing and interconnection, we're ultimately, and there is collective karma as well, we are ultimately responsible for our own karma. But the fact that we have a collective karma has to do with my individual karma. So like we talked a lot about it when the hurricane happened. That's collective karma. But, you know, but there was an individual aspect of my karma that placed me in that situation when the hurricane happened. So it's not totally collective and blended. There's interbeing, but there is a sense of responsibility and right effort and ethical living.
Yeah. So we were talking about that last night. As you know, every time an earthquake happens, it doesn't mean that somebody was really bad. And
Cada vez que hay un terremoto no quiere decir que